Okay, today I'm going to talk about trimming, and first, the reasons why we trim. We trim for making pots uniform in thickness so that when they heat up in a kiln environment or they heat up in a utility environment such as in an oven or a microwave, they expand and contract uniformly. Likewise, if you put it in a freezer, it's going to contract and expand when you take it out uniformly. So that's the main reason, but we also trim to add aesthetic to it, and so like putting it on a pedestal, it's a nice added feature for it. We trim to make things fit, such as this lid, and so those properties are important with trimming. I have here a pot that is untrimmed, and I have one that's trimmed, and I cut it open so you can see the wall thickness in it. This describes the uniformity I was talking about and the aesthetic, that foot ring to hold on to. So before we get started, I want to talk about the tools that we're going to use. And we're going to use two basic tools. There's a pear tool, looks like this. It takes its shape from this, right here, its name, from that shape. And then there's a whole bunch of different trim tools, these double-ended loop tools or wire tools. And I like one that has a tight corner and at least some hard edge, flat edge like that to dig into it. But there's a whole variety of these that you can use. Okay, so we know why, or what we're going to do to trim it to make it uniform. We also now need to know when do you trim it, and this is kind of the tough part, the timing of it. What we're looking for is what we call leather hard, and we want to be able to dent the clay, but we shouldn't be able to smear it. Okay, so it should be able to handle it without it being sticky, but without having too much distortion, because we don't want to collapse the walls or trim through the pot or make it too thin and have it crack, because it's really easy to go through a wet pot. We also don't want to have the clay be too dry because it'll create dust, silica, which is really hard for our lungs. It dulls out the tools and it creates a lot of problems with cracking and things like that. So to begin with, we're going to center this, and we're going to use two techniques. One that employs the tap method, and the other that is going to use the guide method. The tap method is a little more challenging, but I'll demonstrate it by starting off by getting this as close as I can between the grooves on here, and I'll make it a little more out of center so you can see it. And what I do is I just tap this gently until it comes into play in the middle. It looks easier than it is. I've done this for a while. I'm going to show you the beginning technique that I teach most of my first-time students, and I'll have it a little out of center here. And that's where we take a guide, either your finger, a wooden wooden tool, or a needle tool. And we'll take this, we bench it off of here, we hold it steady to where we can see it's touching, and then there's a gap on the other side. So where it touches and where the gap is, we have to split that difference. So we're going to go away from where it touches, half the distance to the gap. And as we do that, we're going to take clay called keys, and this clay is a little bit harder than what you would throw with. We want it firm so it's not going to stick to the pot and leave little bits of itself on there, and also so it doesn't distort so that the pot doesn't slide around. We use at least 4 keys, that way if one falls off we have the opportunity to kind of still hold it. If we used only 3 keys and one came off, the pot could fly away. So we're going to just lightly key it in to start with, and we'll try getting that centered again. So it's still touching a little bit there. I'm going to move it over just a little bit away from where it's touching, so it'll be touching equally all the way around. Getting closer. And there we go. I think that'll work. Okay, so we want it centered because we want to keep the walls uniform. If it's out of center, the walls won't be uniform. They'll be thick and thin. One side will be heavier than the other. Trimming, we like to hold the tools like we hold all of our tools, middle finger and thumb, and then we can kind of use our pointer to add a little bit of pressure. I like this technique because I can hold onto it firmly, and I can put pressure right up near where I'm going to be doing all my work. We're going to trim on the right hand side. It's passive, it lets clay fly off. Here our hands don't bend so well if we work on left-hand side. So we work on the right-hand side, and we trim top down. That allows us to go through all the little features that might have been from transhandling and moving it around. But it also allows us, when we trim top down on the inside, we end up with a parallel foot, that this ring is all going to be one distance across, uniform in thickness. So, nice speed, kick wheel speed. Benching off my hand, holding it with my right, and I'm going to trim top down. And I never trim more than about a 1/4 inch in at a time. I'm talking about this way in. So I just take little bites and go down. The part of the tool I'm using is the angle in here. The flat parts are good for planing off material, but the angles are good for cutting material. Here's another technique where I can kind of grab the end of it and go. You'll notice I'm benching the tool off my wrist right here, and I can bench off of this. It's very similar to working on a metal lathe or wood lathe, where you can use the wheel tray here as a bench. So we're trimming top down, and we follow that. I never trim more than about 1/3 of the way down the pot. We're just trimming away the material that was used to buttress it, to hold it up a little thicker at the bottom. And now I'm going to take the flat part here and plane this in. We'll round this off. And this is one of the choices here. It's an aesthetic choice, a functional choice. I like to have a foot that has recurve to it, an undercut, so I have something to hold on to. And I also like the shadow it creates underneath. It kind of, as that pedestal form, sort of adds more attention to this up here. But that's my choice. You can trim the foot any way you like. One of the other things I do with it is I also like to have the foot kind of balance the thickness of the bead on the rim. And so you can kind of see how that matches up with that. But again, that's an aesthetic choice. I just like the feel of it. A pot feels more uniform, even if it's heavy, thick, if the foot and the top are the same thickness. Okay, coming in from the top, I'm going to decide how wide I want that foot, and I'll make my initial cut. And I let it glide for a little while and make a little groove. Now I can come back in, and I'm going to follow the contour of this. Notice I always look at the inside of my form, so this has to be curved to fit it. And by making this outside edge first, I won't accidentally trim over my foot ring. And so make a few passes on that. And start taking our arc down. So this foot is going to be a little deep, probably about a 1/2 inch or so at the outside edge. So how do you know when you're going to go through? When's enough? Practice, for one. There's a couple techniques. You can do what we call a tapping technique, and it has a density of like a drum. The thinner it is, the more taut it is. The higher pitch, the thicker it is, the more bassy that sound is. Another technique you can do is you can always take a thumbtack and push it through the bottom, the inside of the pot. And you want to choose a tack that's about the length of whatever your thickness that you're trimming to. And so you can put it in on the side or in the middle of it, wherever you may need it. And you can use that to trim with. Again, I think practice, repetition, enough times, and knowing your work when you throw it is probably the best source for knowing when to stop. So I'm going to trim this up a little bit on the inside, and here's a different kind of handhold. This time I'm using the rim of this to push against, to get a little leverage. And so I have my left hand thumb to sort of cam off of, to arch that against. And I'll round that off on the inside as well. A little more cleanup on the bottom. And yeah, you can get a little lightheaded from all the blowing of the debris out of it. Okay, final touches to this, burnishing. I can take my thumb and burnish it, or I can use the pear tool handle here. And I just kind of roll that over the edge and down into the inside lip of that foot. And that makes it nice and smooth, closes the grains, and when it's fired, you'll have less drag on the kiln shelf and you'll have less scratching on your table. If you use a sponge to do that technique, it'll look smooth, but it's going to bring up all the fine grains into the sponge and then leave you with a lot of grog, especially if it's stoneware, a lot of the rougher bits of clay. And that's not a nice thing to have firing your work. Okay, here's a little trick. I'm leaving these three on, and I'm going to take this one off and peel these back just a little bit. And then I'm going to come in, make a little mark here and a little mark there. I can take this off now, look at it, feel it, and decide whether that's enough. And if it isn't enough, I take it and park it right back in there, key it back in, and it's ready to go. This one looks pretty good to me though, so I'm going to take it off and call it done by signing my name on the bottom and putting it to get this fired.